We gotta just chill out, man.
Pittsburgh Steeler fans, welcome back to another episode of the Scho Bro Show. This is Steel Curtain Network editor Dave Schofield coming at you Tuesday night, little after 9 p.m., the week after the draft. Where else would you rather be, Steelers fans? And with me as always, except when he's not, is my big brother Rich, and this just happens to be a week where he's not. That's right. Big Brosco got a hold of me this morning and said, you know what? I'm not going to make it back until we would have to go really, really late. And then I don't want to tell you I'm going to be late, and then it ends up being later and later, and we end up not even starting a show till after 10 o'clock. So he's like, so if you can find somebody to fill in for me, that would be great. And I said, you know what, bro, I'll let you know. And you know what? I found somebody to fill in. Now, I will tell you that I had certain criteria of who I wanted to fill in this week. And that was, I wanted somebody that hadn't already been on Steel Curtain Network giving their overall thoughts from the draft. No, after the draft, after the live stream was over and everything on. Jeff's been on Let's Ride, and Bad and KT have had Here We Go. Bad had Bad Language. Even Marky D had his show today on Tuesday, and Shannon and Daniel J. Daniel J often fills in when we need somebody. They had their show last night to talk about the draft. Jeremy and Corey were on the Q&A Sunday night. Make sure you go back and check that out if you missed that one. And I'm like, okay, so there we go. I'm like, well, there's like Andrew Wilbar, but he's going to have his show with Jeremy coming up in just a day or two. I'd really like to get a different voice. So I reached back in the channels of time to grab a hold of somebody from the BTSC days. And everybody, I hope you're ready for this. Filling in for Big Brosco this week, we have none other than the one, the only, Jeffrey Benedict. Jeffrey, how's it going tonight?
It's going good. It's going good. It's nice to have a chance to talk again.
Yeah, and I don't know if you all caught it, but I think we looked it up. It was in November. Jeffrey was on with me on a Q&A to bring him back and get his thoughts on everything going on. Jeffrey was at least in the live chat a little bit during our live stream as he was trying to juggle Steelers draft and life and everything else. But I just figured I always loved what Jeffrey brought. I so miss our Vertex articles that we used to do where I did the stats, he did the film, and we tried to line them up one way or the other. It was always a lot of fun. So we're going to get Jeffrey's thoughts on the draft. We're not going to worry about a bunch of news. We're going to cover that as we go. We're just going to take it all in. And actually, I said we're going to start off. We're going to take a wide view of the Steelers 2025 draft. We're going to look at it like from a distance as the whole thing, and then we'll narrow it down a little bit. But we're going to start off kind of with a wide-angled lens. So I'm going to ask Jeffrey this to start. What did you see the goal or goals of the Steelers draft for 2025 coming into it before we got going? What you're like, the Steelers after this draft, they really need to do this or have this or not do this, things of that nature.
Well, for like the fifth consecutive year, I really wanted him to address defensive line. I think that's pretty much always my thing. I'm like, Did you get a defensive lineman and an offensive lineman? So I'm happy with the defensive line thing. I wanted them to get that because you could see how little depth they had on the defensive line last year, where they really you could be worn down. Yeah. Cam Hayward's not that guy that's going to go 60 minutes and be fresh. That's not in the cards anymore. So I wanted that. Really, that was the main thing. I kind of secretly really hoped that there wouldn't be a big quarterback acquisition. I've been kind of rooting for the chaos, of a Mason just the drama of a Mason Rudolph led quarterback room. Mm-hmm. it feeds my soul a bit. Plus, I wasn't a big believer in this quarterback class, or I just kind of wanted to see it. I'm like, let's get some of these other pieces. Let's do. So for me, the goal of this draft was really get your front lines together again. Like really work on that. I think the offensive line, they dealt with that last year. It was time to deal with the defensive line.
Yeah.
And they did.
Well, I just have to let everyone know. I told Jeffrey I was going to ask this question. I did not hear his answer. He doesn't know my answer. But I am not one bit surprised because I already had mine ready to go. I had two main things. Well, actually, there was a third one, but the two main things that I wanted from this draft coming into it for the Steelers was I wanted the Steelers to invest in the defensive line like they have in the offensive line, and I wanted them to not reach for a quarterback, which is exactly what you said. Now, one other thing that I said, I'm like, you know what? See if you can find the right fit at running back at some point. I didn't. We'll get into that when we get to the selection of Caleb Johnson. I didn't dive really big time into the running backs this year because there were so many, and I trusted the Steelers to know who would be a better fit for them than what I would figure out. So that was one that I'm like, I think they'll grab a running back. I've gone on record as saying I didn't even think that they had to take a running back in this draft because of Jalen Warren, Kenneth Gainwell. I felt that they were going to get another running back. But if it was a free agent after the draft because the draft didn't work out right, that would have been fine too. Either way, I felt that they were going to add to it, but it wasn't the highest priority. So I'm glad that they did what they did when they did, and we'll get there. And hopefully I'll get Jeffrey back because he just disappeared. So I'm hoping that I'll be messaging him here now. Hopefully we'll get him back here soon. That isn't a problem that's going to be very long. So what I'm actually going to do, rather than dive too much more into the draft stuff, I am going to at least mention some things going on with the Steelers when it comes to the roster. They've signed on undrafted free agents, 7 of them so far. They could add more. They have the roster spots. The Steelers officially released Ryan Watts. That's a very sad situation. He's not going to be able to play football again, unfortunately. That's just based on the doctors and everything else. I'm sure they worked everything out in that regard. So that's the only thing that the Steelers have officially announced. But it's been reported that the Steelers released Montravius Adams from Adam Schefter. So it's not like it was a strange report. And so that was one. Poor Jeffrey says he thinks he just lost internet. So we'll see if we can get him back. So as I try to message him real quickly, sorry, it's hard to talk about one thing and send Jeffrey a message at the same time. So there was that move to Montravius Adams, and that the Steelers reportedly signed wide receiver Robert Woods to I think a 1-year, $2 million contract. Honestly, that eats up of the salary cap. I did a salary cap report for Steel Curtain Network .com. It's there. I did it for today, Tuesday. It's there. Pretty much signing Woods, releasing Adams, and the dead money that you get, the little bit that was left from Ryan Watts. You're basically at about the same spot that you were before. So that's going to be interesting to see how that works out. Jeffrey's trying to get back. This is what he said. He is experiencing a thunderstorm. So he lost internet because of a storm. So if he's able to restore it, he's going to make it back. So man, I'm so bummed that this is going on, but hopefully maybe we can get him back and get rolling with it here. The other news for the Steelers, I think, you know what? That's really all the news other than, we know Derek Carmen's jersey number. There is something I'm going to go ahead and talk about. Oh, wait a second. You back?
Sorry.
There's the picture.
I hope so. We had that huge storm hit, and like I know they're pulling trees off of lines and stuff now, so I hopefully we're good.
Yes. So for those of you who may be joining us a little bit late, Big Bro Scho was going to be really, really late tonight. So he asked me to get someone to fill in. So I figure, hey, let's figure out what's going on with Jeffrey Benedict if we can get him here. If we lose you again, we're going to know why. We'll understand. But then if that's the case, I'll just talk compensatory formula while you're gone. All I did while you were gone, Jeffrey, is I talked about the reported roster moves that we've had since the draft. With Adams and Watts and Woods. So let's dive right back into the draft.
Okay.
Did you think that running back was something that at some point along the way, because of the class and because it's the Steelers, that they were going to pick one up at some point?
Yeah, and looking at the Steelers room, there's room for one.
Yeah.
There really is. Even with the additions they made, you've got pieces, but you don't have a real like room together. I felt there was a good space for that. So that was one. I mean, really, I could have seen so many different directions the Steelers went.
Mm-hmm.
Like there was a lot of room to go different ways through this draft. 2 defensive linemen and an edge rusher was not what I was expecting. Even though I wanted defensive line, like hitting it twice.
Edge rusher either. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
and that, but hey, things fell as they fell, and they aren't afraid to go.
Yeah, to me, when it came to running back, it was like, no, you're fine. When it came to running back, I just didn't want them to force it. Let the draft come to you. I didn't want to see them go running back in the first round unless it was Genty. So that was it. I don't know if Jeffrey, are you still there? Okay, I thought you were frozen for a moment. That was the only one that I was going to feel comfortable. But we'll see what we can do with that as we go. Because is the storm still rolling through?
It's been done. It's just they're cleaning stuff up.
Gotcha. Well, hey, we dealt with that the weekend before the draft. My goodness, Jeff Hartman didn't have power for I think 4.5 days. It was crazy. Luckily, we were only out for just several hours here at our house, but it was crazy. But yeah, Ed, what did you think about it just at the time about the Steelers drafting an edge rusher with their first pick on day 3? That was their first pick on day 3 in the 4th round.
Yeah, I was a little taken aback by that. I mean, you look at mock drafts. There's so many drafts that had him at the end of the first round, like early in the second round. So getting him in the 4th, that makes a little more sense. At some point, he just becomes that good of a value. And he kind of fits that Marcus Golden kind of, thing they like to have at the depth there, where you just have someone. I think he fits kind of what they're going for in backups and in depth pieces. And so it seemed just like a kind of a good fit pick.
Yeah.
But also, looking across the AFC North, what a weird draft class for this group to be like, you had a whole bunch of linebackers and defensive linemen, right? Linebackers, edge, defensive line, ton of them. Everyone. And if you look at the players they're drafting, they're not coverage guys. There's like there's a few pass rushers in there, but most of them are run defenders.
Yeah.
The offensive linemen taking were like run blockers. We saw several running backs get taken. Like, even if you go through like the first 4 rounds, the more valuable picks, you got one quarterback. Yeah. Like, it was just kind of interesting to see how the AFC North seems to be loading up for a very different brand of football than most of the rest of the league. Like, we are really building up for that. We're going to smash each other in the face football.
Yeah. Well, honestly, I guested on a Philadelphia sports podcast today. It's one that I've been on several times. If you're interested in doing that, just check me out on X, STLR Superfan Dad. I shared and reposted where they shared the podcasts It's like the longest running Philadelphia sports podcast. I think they're 12 years into it. So they just had me talking about the Steelers, the draft, what the season's going. And I said that about, the Steelers almost seem like they drafted like they were a team that could not stop the run last year. But that's actually not true. They were 6th against the run. They just couldn't stop the Ravens the last two times they played them out of the 3 games they faced them. So it's almost like they were specifically lining up to say, hey, if the Ravens are going to try to play this type of football, then we're going to counteract that, and we're going to be ready to defend that type of football.
Yeah, I think that's kind of been Mike Tomlin's strategy recent, like even late in the Ben years. It was kind of like, if we can beat the Ravens, the rest of the season will take care of itself. But you've just got to be a team that can beat the Ravens.
Yes, and
almost like it's a college rivalry.
Yeah, that's actually a good point when you look at it. But they've won the North the last 2 years, so you've still got to figure something out, and that's important enough. And I mean, my goodness, if you're trying to stop the run there, then looking at Cleveland, that's probably a decent place. I don't think Cleveland's quite the running team. Well, let's just say this: it's up in the air if they're going to be quite the running team that they were, 2-3 seasons ago. They weren't quite that last year, and I mean. The Bengals aren't a running team at all, but they also don't really have a defense. So at that one, they're more the outlier. But then you also look at who was the Super Bowl champs, the Philadelphia Eagles. And for someone who asked, it actually was not an FFSN podcast. It's another place that I've been guesting on since before we even started FFSN. So, but the Eagles are a team that were strong with the run. But even when the Steelers played the Eagles, they held them under their season average rushing. So it wasn't like they got gashed by the Eagles. I think they gave up like 130 yards, which was, well below what the Eagles averaged for the season. But then again, the Eagles were still able to have success because the Steelers were not defending the pass well. So I think they also had to address that as well. But that was more of a free agency move. So I like that the Steelers went defense with their top pick because they hadn't done it since Devin Bush, since 2019. And that's why their defense is so expensive, is because they keep having to pay free agents and things like that to come in and do it because you're not investing high enough draft capital. So let's go ahead and we'll work our way through the draft a little bit here. I have to admit, I placed a small wager on DraftKings that the Steelers were going to take a defensive lineman that actually even included edge rusher. So I would have, but not that I felt that was going to be it in the first round. So my $5 turned into $12.50 based on those odds. So, I tell you what, man,
rolling in it.
That's enough for a burrito at Chipotle. So there we go. But it was the whole idea of, that was an easy bet. And it made it fun to watch. Did you really have any doubt about the Steelers going defensive lineman in the first round, especially when Derek Carman was there?
I was watching the defensive lineman sit there. I was watching Derek Carman on there. I saw several people that are, on the beat in the team, have a few connections saying, it's looking like it's going to be that defensive lineman. So I was very excited for it. I was just hoping he had been linked to the Steelers pretty well. And I like Derek Harmon a lot. He reminds me a lot of, if you go back to early Stephon Tuitt, where we just line up, get that good first step off, and then just push people, right? Like, I get that first step, I get an advantage on you, and you're going to have a really hard time just trying to even stop me from disrupting your play. I'm going to be in your backfield. And that's Derek Harmon to me. You look, he lines up 4-eye, he lines up at the 3, he lines up at the 2-tech. All the places the Steelers are going to line him up, and all he does is get past the first guy into the back.
Yeah.
Field in your way some way, right? And if you can do that, we can work with you. right? Everything else you can do after that is golden. Like if you can't get that first part, if you can't get into their backfield, it's not so great. But if you can, that's beautiful. That's what you need to do.
Yeah, and see, the way I thought the draft would fall is he's one of the guys that I'm like, I wanted him, but I didn't know that he would make it. When we did our mock draft on this show 2 weeks ago, he was gone. He was gone. We traded back and took Kenneth Grant. I thought Kenneth Grant could be a consolation prize. Walter Nolan was further down the list for me, but honestly, I thought Derek Harmon. I was really big on Grant early in the process, but the more I listened to like Jeremy Betts, the more I talked to Roy Countryman, the more I heard more things. I'm like, Derek Harmon is a guy that honestly, I even liked him better than Mason Graham, in all honesty. So
Wow.
I said on the live chat or during the live show, I think it would be hilarious if the Browns picked at 5 and got a defensive lineman and the Steelers picked at 21 a defensive lineman, and ultimately the Steelers ends up being better. That would just be a typical Cleveland thing. But I was surprised there was only one left, and he was the one. That is not what I expected. I expected if you didn't have the full complement, he was going to be the one that was gone. Other than, Graham was going to go high. I knew that. There wasn't anything wrong with him with that. But that was just my thoughts on the player.
I think Derek Harmon was there because he's a better, traditional 3-4 defensive than he is that interior defensive tackle. To me, when you see him out at 3 tech, when you see him at 4, even if he doesn't really go out to 5, but that kind of position, that's where he really shines. When he is that inside shoulder of the tackle and just drives into that gap, he's almost impossible to stop if you don't give guard help. There's games where it was just that was it. That was their defensive strategy, was that guy's going to get blown up and everything flows behind it, right? And that reminds me of the Steelers doing that with Stephon Tuitt and Cam Hayward, where it's just like, we're going to blow up this gap.
Yeah.
And then everything flows from behind that. That great 2019 defense, one of my favorite defenses I've ever watched. That's what they did. That's what the Steelers did. They just blew up those tackle gaps, and we're like, we dare you to try and do anything on offense when we're blowing up this gap every single play. Yeah. And Derek Harmon's that kind of a guy, and I love the pickup.
And I actually like the fact that being a defensive lineman, he can get snaps from the very beginning. When you're talking offensive line, it's an all or nothing. It's when's he going to be in the lineup or when's he not. So with the defensive lineman, you can ease him into it. I mean, Cam Hayward was eased into it when he was a rookie. So you don't have to play him a ton of snaps if you feel like he's not ready, or if you want him to concentrate on doing a specific thing or a specific spot in a specific package, and then you can expand on that. So I like it because he should see playing time in week 1 outside of, I know there's the possible injury flag that came up with him just before the draft, but he didn't know what was talked about, and the Steelers said that they were fine with it. So we'll see how that goes. Anything else about that one before we move on?
One last thing. Have you seen the video of him using Cam Hayward's like the one arm, just hold somebody off with one hand? He does that. As soon as I saw that, I was just like, I couldn't love this pick more. He like, there was a run play and he just straight out had that longer arm. He's like, my arm's longer than yours and you won't touch me. And he just put his hand on the guy's like right here, grabbed his shirt and just pushed him at one arm. And I was just like, I couldn't believe it. It was beautiful. It's Cam Hayward stuff. And he does a little bit of it. I don't want to get too crazy about him because obviously doing it in college is one thing. Doing
too much expectation on him right off the bat. Yeah.
Right. I don't want to put all of that on him.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean,
he's going to be 2016 Cam Hayward as a rookie.
There you go. There you go. There you go. I also have to say, my heart goes out to him with the situation with his mom who passed away that night. I mean, part of me, apparently, it wasn't unexpected, I haven't heard a story, but I wouldn't be surprised if you find out, that he said she was on life support. So I don't know if they were specifically keeping her around for after he was drafted, before any, if they had to make a decision about it or something like that. I don't know, but it was a tragic situation. Loved when he was at Oregon, when they asked him, what are you doing with any of your NIL money? He says, got my mom a car. Oh, what'd you get her? Well, she's in a wheelchair. I got her a van that's wheelchair compatible. I mean, the focus on what's important with that specific thing just tells me, I'm like, you know what? That's what he did with it. I wish he could have the whole thing with the city and the stops and the tours. They'll get to that, I'm sure. I don't think they're going to want to deprive him of that, but now just wasn't the time yet, as he was dealing with everything there. But as I just, don't want a repeat of last year. I just hope he's healthy and can contribute throughout the season. Is the biggest thing there. Moving on to day 2, did you think the Steelers were going to find a way to get back into round 2?
I didn't. They didn't really have capital to move, so
not after they
figured
didn't move back in round 1, right?
Yeah.
I
didn't expect any of that.
I was going to say, how about any of the moving of George Pickens stuff? Did you?
I never thought that was real.
That? Yeah.
No, because you weren't going to get any kind of value for him. They would have been dumping him. And I think the people who say George Pickens isn't a problem at all are underselling it. And the people who think George Pickens is a big problem are overselling it. He is a personality that you have to account for. But I don't think he's necessarily a problem, especially when he brings what he brings on the field. You have to weigh these things. Like how much valuable is he on the field? How do we mitigate his damage in the locker room? Like stuff like that.
He has a very unique personality, I think is the best way to say it. And so I'm looking forward to see now. Is it possible the Steelers could still move him? Sure. It really all depends on we don't know the dynamic right now. They do. But if you weren't going to get a 2 for him in this year's draft, then I don't blame him for not moving. I really don't. So, I mean, they were really going to have to make it worth it. So the Steelers then, they're picking in round 3 on day 2. And me, for a long time, I'm like, I'd take the quarterback and everything there. But not when arguably the second best running back. A lot of people had him maybe at 4, some at 3, some at 2 in the draft was there. I didn't have him like higher than what some other people were saying. But as I said, I didn't dive much into the running backs outside. I knew Genty was really good. Outside of that, I'm just like, I want the Steelers to do what's best for them. Did the Steelers get the right fit? I don't know if I lost Jeffrey again or not. He might be frozen. So, I'm going to be bummed. Hopefully he can see. Hopefully he'll be back to us. So, which is funny because we haven't lost him from the screen. He's just locked up. So hopefully maybe I don't know if Jeffrey's talking and thinking that we can hear him or not right now, but we'll just have to roll with it. When it came to this pick, this was one of these famous things for me with the draft, that I don't fall in love with somebody until after I find out they're a member of the Steelers. And that was really easy to do with Caleb Johnson. Hopefully Jeffrey will be back soon. That was an easy one for me, just because, he runs more of the outside zone scheme and things that Arthur Smith would like to do. He's got the size and power to be that third and short back that wasn't on the Steelers roster. I did not even, honestly, I didn't look much at him because he was a player that wasn't supposed to be available when the Steelers were picking in the 3rd round. He was supposed to be someone if they landed a 2nd round pick. So that's what I'm going to do. What I'm going to do at this point is we're going to go ahead and take a break. while Jeffrey's dealing with internet issues again from the remnants of the storm that ran through at his area. So if you're with us here live on Facebook, YouTube, X, we're not going anywhere. If you're with us here on the audio side, stick around. We'll be right back after this. All right, we got to relax. Don't worry. I've got to relax and don't worry and trust that Jeffrey's going to make it back here to talk more about these draft picks. So since we just came out of the break, I am going to actually talk about some stuff that's been going on out there. I'm going to be looking to do some more articles this week at steelcurdnetwork.com. Make sure you're checking that out if you haven't already. But there's a lot of talk out there and a lot of incorrect information going on about the Steelers compensatory picks for this year, meaning for based on free agency this year that will be in the 2026 NFL draft. Now, here's how it works. All right. I'm not going to dive a ton into how the compensatory system goes because I've done that in the past, but you've got to be an unrestricted free agent, not a street free agent. Meaning if you're someone that's cut, you're not going to count. You've got to sign with a new team. And the way it works is they rank every player that plays in the NFL this coming season based on they start with their salary. They rank every player. They start with the highest salary and give them the most points. How many points is it? However many players they have. If it's 1,927 players, then the player with the highest salary gets 1,927 points. Number two gets the next and the next and the next. So based on that, you can kind of have an idea of what you could get from a player, but it's also based on their percentage of snaps played in the next season. Okay. The salary is based on the average over the length of the contract. So if you sign a 5-year, $55 million contract, then you're going in at $11 million. It doesn't matter how it's broken down from there. So that's the deal with that. Then it comes into playing time and awards. Like if you make not Pro Bowl, all pro or all conference, you get some bonus points. But if you play more than 25% of the snaps on either on offense or defense for your team, then you add points on according to that percentage. If you played 54% of the snaps, they add 54 points. So when you break it down, it's Over the Cap does a great job with this, and they have it where you have all your compensatory free agents and where they sit, where they lie, and then you cross out the number of lost. For every player that you gained, you cross out one that's lost in that same round. Now, if you don't have someone that's in the same round, then it doesn't matter. Believe it or not, right now, they updated this because I was having some issues with it before that I was surprised that I'm like, how come a Landon Roberts isn't counting? How come someone else isn't counting? The Steelers are actually set up where they have 6 players that aren't canceled out. Now, you can't get more than 4. You can't have more than 4 comp picks in the draft. So before I was kind of worried. I'm like, if Brandon Echols plays a lot of stats for the Steelers, he could end up counting as a compensatory free agent. He's right on the cusp. But all that's going to do is cancel another one of the guys at the bottom. Like they said, they're set up for 6. They could have 2 guys. Both Echols and Ekwale could both play enough snaps that they count in the formula, which means they reach 7th round status, which I think means you have to be in the top 35% of all the rankings. Then all that's going to do is cancel out another 6th round pick. So right now the Steelers are set to have a 3rd, a 4th, a 5th, and a 6th. And they also have 2 more 6 after that aren't canceled. It's crazy. They actually just updated this within the last several hours because it wasn't like that earlier. So I keep having to go back and forth to the numbers there and back to the screen to make sure Jeffrey's not back. Still waiting to potentially hear from him. So when you look at it, you're like, oh yeah, the Steelers are, some people are already say that the Steelers have been awarded. No, or officially have. No, there's nothing official about the comp picks. I did this in the past, where the last time the Steelers got a comp pick, it didn't work out the way that they thought it would, because Bud Dupree didn't play enough snaps. So instead of getting a 3rd round pick, they got a 4th round pick. He was hurt. So right now the Steelers are set up to get a 3rd round pick for Dan Moore Jr., but they have to estimate how many snaps he's playing. They're estimating him at like 80 some percent. If Dan Moore plays 80 some percent of the snaps, he's going to be a 3rd round compensatory value. That's it. If he gets hurt and drops to like 50%, he's going to drop to a 4th rounder. That's just going to be how it is. So Steelers fans are going to want to be cheering for Dan Moore to play a lot in Tennessee. Same deal with the next one, which is Justin Fields as a 4th round pick. There's potential. Like, I think they have him in like estimated in the snaps in the 60s. Sorry, I don't have that right in front of me. It's this huge list, but I'll break this down more in an article later this week. That if he plays enough percentage of the snaps, he could move up to a 3rd rounder. He could. Now, Russell Wilson, he's an interesting one because his salary, I don't know if they take into account incentives that they could earn. I think they do. And if he earns a bunch of them and plays a lot of snaps, he technically could maybe go up to a 4th, but he's more likely to drop to a 6th if he doesn't play over half the snaps this year. So those are all interesting things to remember with that. So just because you see people reporting, oh, the Steelers will have a 3rd, a 4th, a 5th, and a 6th next year, not necessarily. It's highly unlikely that they don't get 4 picks because of the way it's shaped up now. But what those picks are could be moving around based on how much people are playing. Like I said, I'll try to get that more later in an article to where you actually know what you can kind of root for and look for this year when it comes to some of the Steelers' former players. So there we go. Jeffrey's not here, so unfortunately, I'm just going to have to keep rolling on about the draft. I'm really bummed because we started to talk about 4th round draft pick Jack Sawyer in an earlier spot. I felt this was the spot for the Steelers to take an edge rusher if they took one. They didn't need to take one this draft. If you take one higher than where they did, then you're like, what are you doing for someone who's probably not ever going to start, assuming you got TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith? If you take one lower, you're like, well, are they really going to even be good enough to get into the rotation? They were right in that sweet spot where they got Nick Herbig. So you're bringing in someone else about the same draft pedigree as Herbig, but he's going to be probably a similar role as Herbig, but he's going to be more of your run stopping edge, which is not Herbig's forte. So that's one of those things. I did not expect them to do this in the draft, but the fact that they did it, I really like how it fits in. And I never would have guessed it at the time, leading up to the draft or in the moment. So of course, you all know, you know me, I'm going to fall in love with the Steelers draft picks. It's just what I'm going to do. I mean, my goodness, they draft an enormous nose tackle. I say nose tackle because it doesn't mean that he can't play anywhere else. He's probably going to let's just say it, his fastest route to snaps played is going to be at nose. And then, maybe in a few years when Cam Hayward's gone, and retired, unfortunately, my favorite player, I don't want to talk about that. But then there could be some other places, other snaps available along the defensive line. But Wyatt Black, I said it before, I'm like, even if you just tell this dude, all right, we're not going to use you much this year, except this week and that week when we're facing the Ravens, be ready to play a lot. And I think that would, 5th round draft pick, I think that's worth it. And then the Steelers, my goodness, they turned around. And I expected them to add a quarterback over draft weekend. I didn't want them to draft one too high that then they felt like they had to evaluate for multiple years as a potential starter that could inhibit what they might want to add in the future. That's the easiest way for me to sum that up. Here, I'm going to try to message Jeffrey again. With that I just thought that was their best fit in this quarterback class. And if the draft didn't come to them in that regard, then just add an undrafted free agent because you know you're going to add another veteran, whether it be Aaron Rodgers or someone else. That was just the best way to go, to make sure that you added one over the weekend. So I'm sorry, I can't type and podcast all by myself. It seems like. So the fact that they added the player that I would have loved to have taken, Will Howard, in the 4th round of our mock draft that we did 2 weeks ago, but he was gone. I'm trying to think, he might have already been gone in the 3rd round. So I'm just like, no, I'm not gonna take a quarterback unless one comes to us. Now, what happened in our draft, our mock draft? If you all remember, if you weren't here, you're like, oh, what? When 2 weeks ago, when we let the live chat, make the picks for our live draft, we took a 6th round quarterback and we got Dylan Gabriel, and that was a steal in the 6th round. But my goodness, Gabriel went in the 3rd round as the 5th overall quarterback to the Browns before they took Shadur Sanders. So, I'd have taken Dylan Gabriel in the 6th round, but they got the guy that I wanted more, and they didn't even have to take him in the 5th. They trade back in the 5th, pick up an extra 7th, still don't take the quarterback, and they get the quarterback in the 6th. I think that was a huge steal. I think the expectations for Will Howard this year should be extremely low. I expect what my goal for Howard is, I want to see his name on the inactive list every week as the 3rd quarterback, because I think the Steelers are going to add in a way that they don't need to do that. I mean, if he just does better than that and they're like, wow, we've got to do something with this guy, great. I'm just saying my expectations. If he was just the 3rd quarterback, gets to be in uniform, but only goes in if the other 2 are hurt all season, perfect. He could even possibly do that the next year. But to me, you take this guy now to try to shape him into a potential long-term backup, like a Landry Jones that I kept saying. And if that happens, great. And if it doesn't, as a 6th round pick, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. Oh, wow. I mean, the Steelers took a 7th round quarterback several years ago that they didn't even keep through all 3 preseason games. So I'm just saying that I think the potential's there. I felt that Howard was a better quarterback than many of the other ones that were out there. I liked him more than a Jackson Dart, but I think you all knew that with me when the stuff that I was saying about him. Now, I just love that he doesn't have to be that. I mean, you take Jackson Dart in the 1st round like the Giants did, he's got to eventually be the guy in a year or 2. Will Howard doesn't have to be anything. And anything you get from him is a bonus. So I really like that. And then the Steelers, their last 2 picks, Carson Bruner, linebacker out of Washington, that's, to me, he screams Tyler Medikevich. Now you just got a younger version of that. I think he's going to be battling with Mark Robinson to make the roster. And then they add, I keep forgetting the name of the Steelers' final draft pick. Someone's going to help me in the live chat. Slot cornerback that also was a punt returner. And it's really frustrating that it seems like I can never remember his name. That Kent. Okay, thank you. Why I have an article ready to go that even talks about him, and I can't believe that I just am continuing to just completely spaz out on who it was at the Steelers. Dante Kent, another Dante. They got to make sure they have enough Dantes around. So to me, that's, you take a flyer on a player like that, see if he can make the roster. Love it. That no expectations there. No expectations for either of those final 2 players to make the 53-man roster. So you got to also make sure that you have some of those expectations. Greg and I are going to be talking about, our reasonable expectations and stuff Thursday morning on Pittsburgh Standard Time. So when I take a wide view of the draft, I feel like the Steelers checked off the boxes that I was looking for. Okay. Add to the trenches, check. Would I have been okay if they added another offensive lineman, particularly guard, and even as high as round 4? Absolutely, I'd have been fine with that. But I also don't want the Steelers clouding the issue with the young players that they need to evaluate to know if they're the answer or not this year. I'm okay that they didn't do that with the offensive line. That's why you sign a Calvin Anderson to be your swing tackle, so you're not bringing in another tackle that's, could this cloud the issue with these guys? If one of those tackles doesn't work out, which I know a lot of people are right now, the greater chance would be, if Broderick Jones doesn't work out, then you might see the Steelers going tackle again with the day 1 or 2 pick next year. You could see that, or having to try to do something in free agency. But there's a lot of questions that the Steelers need answered on offensive line, and the fact that they didn't cloud it with with draft picks this year, I completely get. So that wasn't something that they had to do with this draft for me. So I was fine that they didn't do it. I was glad they didn't reach on a quarterback. I'd have been fine if they went with the quarterback that they liked in round 3. I honestly, to address the elephant in the room, I didn't know what I thought of Shedeur Sanders, other than the fact that I didn't think he was worth pick 21. If the Steelers thought he would have been something worthwhile later, fine. But I definitely wouldn't have. I mean, if you're taking him in round 4, that's really you're drafting to be a backup and maybe make your big move next year. I don't think that's the right guy, the right personality to come in and say, hey, we just want you to be a backup. And if you're more than that, great. I think someone like Will Howard, you say, hey, we drafted you to be a backup, to shape into a backup quarterback. Go out there and show us that you're more than that. And that's the kind of guy that he'll be content with what he has, but he'll be shooting for everything else, and he's not going to make a problem along the way. That's why I felt that was just a better fit, not at quarterback, but for what the Steelers were ultimately trying to do, because I feel the decision was made, I'll say at least weeks ago, that this was not the draft for the Steelers to actually get their quarterback in the future, that they expect to be their quarterback in the future. If they find it, that's great. But that was not the expectation of this going in. So that's why I feel like it checked off a lot of boxes. When you look at it from just a wide overall view, that's like, okay, needed to add more to the defensive line like we have in the past with the offensive line. Check. Okay. Wanted to, get a decent running back in a very good running back class. To me, check. Arguably, they got the second best one, in my opinion. There was only 2 running backs that were All-American last year. One was Ashton Genty. The other was Caleb Johnson. So there you go. So I'm hoping that all fits. Some other key areas with depth, check. I like what it is, but at the same time, some people are like, oh, what's your grade? Nope, not going to grade it. Not going to grade it, because I want to give these guys a chance to actually go out and play. I remember, was it last year or the year before? I don't know which one. It might have been both. Just to see some people say, oh, like right as the draft's over, like, is this like a 74 draft? I'm like, what are you talking about? These guys haven't played anything in the NFL. You can't even begin to make a comparison like that, which, first of all, I wouldn't compare any draft to the 74 draft. It is that head and shoulders above any draft of any year by any team ever. Easily. That's what it is. You can never even begin to understand if that's a draft that you have, probably until at least 10 years after the fact, because you still need to know if guys are on Hall of Fame trajectory. So please don't jump the gun with grades. If you get grades from a lot of people, I would trust the grades more from maybe the Steelers media, and don't think, oh, they're just homers or anything. They're more in tune with what the Steelers needed to do. The national media is probably giving the Steelers bad grades. I haven't even looked. And the reason that is because they thought that the Steelers would try to go get their next quarterback this year. And they thought wrong. Anyone who was paying attention or listened to what the Steelers were saying or looked at what they were doing would know that's just what it was with those kind of things. So I like the draft. Going into the last round, I said, they're like, what positions they take? I'm like, it's hard to find positions that the guys would have a chance to make the roster. So I do think that the Steelers did find a couple positions and the couple styles of players that they have a chance to make the roster, but of course nothing's guaranteed. So when you look at it from a wide view, I like what happened. I want to continue to fall in love with these players. I'm sorry I have to talk so much, but this is what happens when it's only me. So I wasn't able to hear back from Jeffrey. I think they're dealing with stuff. They might be in a complete outage where he is now. I'm really bummed. It was good to see him again, even if it was for a little bit. We're not going to do a 5 minutes of non-Steelers talk when it's just me because I've been talking enough. So we're going to get to the big question. And I think everyone knows what the big question is this week as I try to spell as I'm talking. Okay. I'm way off. So there, I just took a second to go ahead and type it in. My question is for you all out there now, don't answer this until I put it out in the live chat. I'll do it while I'm answering the question, unless somehow we get Jeffrey back for him to talk about it. What was your favorite pick? What was your favorite pick of the Steelers in this draft? To me, I could go in so many different routes. Love the fact that they got Derek Harmon. Love the Caleb Johnson pick after the fact, as soon as they made it and I started looking at him. I mean, just the stuff I was looking at him before I even did the Breaking News podcast, I was like, I see why Jeremy Betts was going bonkers over this one. I get that. You know, the Sawyer pick made me instantly start scratching my head, but then the more I thought about it, I'm like, this makes sense and it's an important role. I thought the Steelers would double dip I thought that the Steelers could double dip at defensive line. And if they do, they better get a guy that's more of a nose tackle. And they did exactly what I thought they could possibly do. And then they turn around and they get the value quarterback and then add 2 players at the end that they could get. I'm going to go overall. My favorite pick, believe it or not, I'm actually going to say my favorite pick is Will Howard, because I feel that they got either a 3rd or 4th round pick in the 6th because of how everyone was looking at these quarterbacks. I think when you have someone there that the pressure's off of them, I think that could end up being a really good pick. I don't know that he'll ever be the starting quarterback for the Steelers. I don't expect him to be, but you want to know what? He could do it. He honestly could. And then that would just be crazy. But that's my pick because I assumed Rich would probably say Derek Harmon because otherwise that would have been my pick otherwise. So that's what I like to do. So I put that in the live chat for people to go ahead and answer. I'm going to do my very best to keep up with this all by myself. So let's see what you all have to say. Okay. CD says his favorite pick was Caleb Johnson, and then his second then was Harmon, because they were best player available at key positions. Afton, her favorite pick was Harmon. I just, like I said, that's why I wanted to, I was surprised that defensive tackles went and it wasn't him, that he was there. That's really good. Okay. George OTJ, he says it's Johnson or Harmon. That said it's a tie because they're just too good. We got K Mike that says Derek Harmon. Bree, I'm pretty sure that's what it's. Bree says Johnson because he's Le'Veon Bell 2.0. I don't know that he's exactly Le'Veon Bell 2.0, but there's a lot of similar features. He's patient like that, but I don't know that he's as patient as Le'Veon Bell was. Maybe he dives into that. I don't know. But you also got to remember, Le'Veon Bell was able to run behind Marquise Pouncey and David DeCastro. Caleb Johnson doesn't have quite that to start, but he might have some guys that could end up being pretty good there too. We got to see how this plays out. Okay, Reginald Rivers says his favorite draft pick was Sawyer. You know, a dude you expect to not be there, you get him. It wasn't a glaring need, but you're going to be able to have a role for him. Okay, Kevin Brokenborough says the running back is a star in the making. So his favorite pick is Caleb Johnson. Okay. Doug P says, I'm going with Black because he could be the run stuffing nose tackle we've been missing since Casey Hampton. Doug, you're right. The problem is if that's all he is, he's barely going to get on the field. Now, maybe the Steelers are trying to stay ahead of the curve and they see that with all this leaning back towards running the ball more, maybe the sub package football is going to not be as big in numbers, and it's helpful to have that guy. I think he could be that guy. I'm just worried that if he's only that guy, he's not going to ever be the star because of how often he's on the field. But then again, Casey Hampton was the 19th overall pick, and we're talking about a 5th round guy here. So I like this. Gabriel Golden says, so far, all of them are the favorite. Ruben Stone says, running back, Caleb Johnson. Sherry Richards says, Jack Sawyer, love the edge depth with upside. So far, that's all I have here in the live chat, unless it's not updating. If it does update, I'll throw it out there. I'll say this. We're going to continue to break stuff down like crazy. We'll get Big Brosco's thoughts next week. Unfortunately, I'm so bummed for Jeffrey. He wanted to be here. He wanted to do this. But I hope you all understand that sometimes circumstances are, hey, storms roll through, you lose internet, potentially power. The fact that I haven't even got a message back from him tells me that he's dealing with a little bit more than what it originally was. So at least he came back and told us a little bit. Man, I really wanted him to talk about what his favorite pick was because I really wanted to hear his opinion. But it was at least nice to see Jeffrey for a little bit. That kind of seems to be how it is with him when it comes with when it comes to Steel Curtain Network. Make sure you're checking out all our podcasts that are coming. You're going to continue to have, Let's Ride tomorrow morning. I don't know the status of Steel City Insider this week. Hopefully we still have them. I know you're going to be getting some great breakdown on why can't I remember the name of their podcast? Jeremy and Andrews, The Fix. There we go. They're going to have all kinds of good breakdown for you. I know Roy Countryman and Rob, they're going to have crazy breakdown. I expect that show I'm going to have to say, Roy, my goodness, you're killing me with how long the show is going to go because I know he's going to have a lot to say. But you don't want to miss that one. And of course, even Greg and I on Pittsburgh Standard Time Thursday morning, we'll have some stuff to say about the draft. And I'll continue. I say, if you haven't been there, please go check out steelcurtainnetwork.com with the articles that we have there. We're bringing the content. We're pouring our heart and soul into it, and we've got some great contributors doing good stuff there. If nothing else, if you're coming and checking it out, seriously, you don't have to sign up for it, but you could still post a comment without actually signing up to do it, but I could still leave a name. But just go ahead and sign. Really, if there's something in an article that you really like or you don't agree with, say something. Because honestly, the more comments that we're getting on articles, then people are coming back to join the discussion. And really, we like the articles to just be a source of discussion points anyway. So if you got a chance to do that, go check that out. Whew. This is not an easy show to do when you're the only one talking. So it's funny because so many times on a Tuesday night, I'm telling myself, Dave, don't talk too much. Don't talk too much. Well, I didn't have a choice tonight, so I'm really, really sorry. I'm looking to see. I gotta check back and see if I got anybody. Okay, here we go. We got a couple more. John Funker says likes the nose tackle because you can't teach size. It's that whole planet theory. There's only so many people on the planet that have those measurables. Gene Smith says Black is going to crush. Let's see. Steel Nose said something about, I'm going to bring it up, the whole thing. He says, Dunbar sees Black as a 4-tech and Benton still at nose. When I watch the tape, I see why he said it. Black is not just a nose. He moves well. Yeah, he doesn't have to be pigeonholed into that spot. And also, they don't have Harmon there either. So I think maybe they can find the right rotation. I don't have a lot of expectations for Wyatt Black as a rookie. I just want to, if he plays 6 snaps a game, honestly, just get there, do your thing, plug up the hole. Maybe some games more than others. That would be a good season for him. There could even be games where he's not even active, depending on the team. mean, I don't know how much you'd have them on the field against Cincinnati Bengals. Look at what they could be. So that's one that's pretty interesting. Seeing if we had any other last minute answers to the question. Gene Smith said Black and Sawyer is like the Predator handshake with Arnold and Carl. Okay, we can say this. So thank you all so much for being patient with me as I was trying to have Jeffrey involved here. Oh, here we are. I don't know what Rich and I are going to talk about next week. I'm sure we'll be mentioning some of the draft. I've really been bummed that Big Bro couldn't come in and tell you about how he could breathe in the sweet smell of no more mock drafts. Maybe he'll still do that next week. But hey, I'm going to try to do my best impersonation of him and say I am excited about being back here next week with my brother. Can't wait. Relax.